Blood dripped from her fingertips onto the dirty linoleum floor of the diner, keeping time with the frantic pounding of her heart. She wasn't supposed to call him. She was supposed to be strong, to be independent, to never drag a man like him into a messy, shattered life. But as the pain in her left arm flared, a jagged, white-hot scream of a broken bone, Layla realized she had no choices left. The police wouldn't help. A restraining order was just a piece of paper to a monster like Derek. With shaking hands, she pulled the crumpled black business card from her apron pocket. It had no logo, just a name embossed in gold and a number. 1 ring, 2 rings. A deep, gravelly voice answered. "Speak." Layla choked back a sob, whispering the words that would burn down the world around her. Can you come get me?" The fluorescent lights of Joe's all-night diner hummed with an irritating buzz, a sound Layla usually tuned out after her 3rd double shift of the week. Tonight, however, the sound felt like a drill boring into her skull. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in downtown Chicago. The rain was lashing against the plate glass windows, turning the city lights into smeared streaks of neon red and blue. Layla wiped down the counter, the smell of stale coffee and grease clinging to her uniform. She was 23, but in this lighting, with the dark circles under her eyes, she felt 40. She checked her watch, a cheap plastic thing she'd bought at Walmart. 10 minutes until closing. Just 10 minutes until she could walk back to her studio apartment on 4th Street, lock the 3 deadbolts she had installed, and pray for sleep. The bell above the door jingled. Layla didn't look up immediately. "We're closing in 10. Grab a coffee to go if you want," she said, her voice raspy from exhaustion. "Is that how you greet your favorite customer, babe?" The rag dropped from her hand. The temperature in the diner seemed to plummet 20 degrees. Layla looked up, her stomach twisting into a cold, hard knot. Derek stood in the doorway. He was soaking wet, his leather jacket slick with rain, his blonde hair matted to his forehead. He looked handsome in the way a poisonous snake looks beautiful. Sharp jawline, bright blue eyes that were currently glazed over with bourbon and malice. "Get out," Layla whispered, gripping the edge of the counter. "Derek, please, just get out. I have the restraining order." "Paper," Derek scoffed, stepping inside and shaking off his umbrella like a wet dog. He walked with that confident swagger that used to make her blush, but now only made her bile rise. He slid onto a stool right in front of her. "I just want to talk, Layla." "Can't a guy talk to his girl?" "I'm not your girl. We broke up 6 months ago." Layla glanced at the kitchen. The cook, Old Man Miller, had already left out the back. She was alone. "You're my girl until I say you're done," Derek hissed, his voice dropping low. He reached across the counter. Layla flinched, stepping back, but he was faster. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. "Let go!" "I need money, Layla. I know you got paid today. I saw the manager hand you the envelope." "That's for rent," she pleaded, trying to pry his fingers off. His grip was like iron. "Derek, you have a gambling problem." "I can't keep fixing it. I don't have a problem. I have a temporary liquidity issue," he shouted, his mood swinging violently. "Now give me the cash." "No." Derek's eyes went dark. He didn't slap her. He didn't punch her. He did something worse. He smiled. He stood up, dragging her toward him across the counter, twisting her arm behind her back in a move he must have learned from his bouncer friends. "Derek, you're hurting me!" "Give me the money," he roared, wrenching her arm upward at an unnatural angle. "It's in the bag, in the back. Just let go." He didn't let go. He shoved her forwards, and as she stumbled, he yanked her arm back with a sickening force. Snap! The sound was loud, like a dry branch breaking in a quiet forest. Layla didn't scream immediately. Her brain couldn't process the sound. Then the pain hit. A white-hot bolt of lightning shot from her forearm up to her shoulder, blinding her. She crumpled to the floor behind the counter, gasping for air, clutching her left arm to her chest. "Look what you made me do!" Derek spat, looking down at her with disgust rather than remorse. He vaulted over the counter, kicked her purse open, grabbed the envelope of cash, and stepped over her sobbing form. "Next time, don't be so stingy." He walked out. The bell jingled cheerfully. Layla lay on the dirty floor, curled in a fetal position. The pain was nauseating. She looked at her arm. It was bent. It was wrong. She tried to stand, but the room spun. She needed a hospital. She needed an ambulance. But an ambulance cost money she didn't have. The police would come, take a report, and Derek would be bailed out by morning because his father knew the precinct captain. She dragged herself to her purse. Her phone was cracked, but working. She scrolled through her contacts. Mum? Dead. Landlord? Would just evict her for the drama. Her fingers brushed against a stiff piece of black cardstock in the side pocket of her purse. Adrien Volkov. She remembered the night he gave it to her, 3 months ago. He had come into the diner late, wearing a suit that cost more than the building. He had sat in the corner booth, nursing an espresso, while 3 black SUVs idled outside. Some punks had tried to harass Layla that night. Adrien hadn't raised a fist. He had simply stood up, adjusted his cufflinks, and whispered something to them. The punks had run out like the devil was chasing them. Before he left, he placed a $100 tip and this card on the table. "You have kind eyes, Layla," he had said, his voice deep and accented with something Eastern European. "The world is hard on kind people. If you ever find yourself in a corner you cannot get out of, call this number, day or night." She had kept it as a souvenir, a fantasy. But now, looking at her broken arm and the empty cash envelope, fantasy was the only lifeline she had left. She dialed. "Speak." The voice was cold, sharp, efficient. "Adrien?" Her voice broke. A pause. The silence on the other end was heavy. "Layla? He came back." She was sobbing now, the adrenaline fading, leaving only the agony. "He broke my arm. He took everything. I don't know who else. Where are you?" The voice was no longer cold. It was deadly quiet. "The diner, Joe's. Stay there. Lock the door if you can. Do not hang up. I can't lock it. My arm. Then sit in the corner. I am 5 minutes away. Adrien, can you come get me?" "I am already coming, Malyushka. Now." 5 minutes felt like 5 years. Layla sat propped against the ice machine, clutching her swelling arm. The pain was a living thing now, throbbing in time with the flickering neon sign outside. She watched the rain streak the window, terrified that Derek would realize he forgot something and come back. Every set of headlights that swept across the diner walls made her flinch. Then the rumbling started. It wasn't the sound of a normal car. It was a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the floorboards. Tires screeched against the wet pavement outside, aggressive and precise. Layla tried to lift her head. Through the glass, she saw 3 vehicles swarm the parking lot. 2 matte black Cadillac Escalades boxed in the entrance, and in the center, a sleek, charcoal-grey Mercedes G-Wagon skidded to a halt. The doors flew open before the cars even fully settled. Men in dark suits poured out of the Escalades, moving with military precision. They fanned out, securing the perimeter of the diner, their hands hovering near their waistbands. But Layla only had eyes for the man exiting the G-Wagon, Adrien Volkov. He stepped into the rain, unbothered by the downpour ruining his bespoke Italian suit. He was a giant of a man, standing 6'4", with broad shoulders that seemed to block out the city lights. His dark hair was swept back, and his face, usually composed and unreadable, was a mask of thunderous fury. He didn't run, he stalked. He pushed open the diner door so hard the bell didn't just jingle, it ripped off its bracket and clattered to the floor. "Layla!" His voice filled the small space, commanding and terrified all at once. Back here," she whimpered. Adrien vaulted the counter in a single fluid motion, landing softly despite his size. When he saw her curled up by the ice machine, his eyes, usually the color of cold steel, softened instantly. though his jaw remained clenched tight enough to snap iron. He dropped to his knees, disregarding the grease and dirt on the floor. "Don't move," he commanded softly. His large hands hovered over her, trembling slightly as if afraid to touch her. "Show me." Layla shifted, revealing the unnatural angle of her left forearm. A sound escaped Adrien's throat, a low, animalistic growl that made the hair on Layla's neck stand up. It wasn't human. It was the sound of a predator seeing its mate wounded. He turned his head slightly towards the open area of the diner where his men were waiting. "Dimitri!" he roared. A man with a scar running down his cheek appeared instantly at the counter. "Boss, get the car ready. Call Dr. Evans at St. Jude S. Tell him to clear a trauma room. Now." "Done." Adrien turned back to Layla. He stripped off his suit jacket, revealing a white dress shirt and a gun holster strapped to his chest. He draped the jacket gently over her shoulders. It smelled like expensive cologne, gunpowder, and rain. "I'm going to pick you up now," Adrien said, his voice dropping to a soothing rumble. "It's going to hurt. I'm sorry." "It already hurts," she whispered, tears leaking from her eyes. "I know." He scooped her up effortlessly, his right arm supporting her legs, his left carefully cradling her back so as not to jostle her injured arm. Layla buried her face in his neck, the scent of him overwhelming the smell of the diner. As he carried her out of the kitchen, he paused. He looked at the empty cash register, then at the scuff marks on the floor where the struggle had happened. "Who?" Adrien asked. One word. Simple. Final. Layla hesitated. She knew what giving him the name meant. She knew who Adrien Volkov was. Rumors of the Russian Prince of Chicago weren't hard to come by if you listened to the late-night truck drivers. But the throbbing in her arm and the memory of Derek's laugh as he stepped over her broke her resolve. "Derek," she whispered against his neck. "Derek Holt." Adrien didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He walked out into the rain, shielding her body with his own. He placed her gently into the back seat of the G-Wagon, where the leather was soft and the heater was already blasting. He buckled her in with surprising gentleness. Before he closed the door, he leaned in, brushing a wet strand of hair from her forehead. "Rest now, Layla. The pain ends tonight." "Where are we going?" she asked, her vision blurring as shock began to set in. "Home," he said. He closed the door. Through the tinted window, Layla watched as Adrien walked over to Dimitri. He spoke 2 sentences, his face devoid of humanity. Dimitri nodded, pulled out his phone, and signaled the men in the second Escalade. They didn't get back in the car to follow Adrien. They turned and walked down the street toward the bars where Derek usually spent his nights. As the G-Wagon pulled away, Layla realized she hadn't just called for a ride. She had called down a war, and for the first time in her life, she felt safe. The drive to the hospital was a blur of city lights and the comforting weight of Adrien's hand resting on her knee. He drove with one hand on the wheel, his eyes scanning the mirrors constantly, but his touch anchored her. They bypassed the waiting room at St. Jude S. The hospital staff seemed to know Adrien. Nurses parted like the Red Sea as he carried her straight through the double doors. Dr. Evans, a greying man with tired eyes but steady hands, was waiting. "Simple fracture of the radius," Evans muttered later, examining the x-rays. "Clean break, fortunately. No surgery needed, but she needs a cast and rest. Lots of rest. She's malnourished, Adrien, and dehydrated." Adrien stood in the corner of the private room, his arms crossed over his chest. He had been silent for the last hour, watching the doctors work with the intensity of a hawk. When the doctor mentioned malnourished, Adrien's knuckles turned white. "She will get everything she needs," Adrien said. It sounded less like a promise and more like a threat to the universe. By the time Layla was discharged, the sun was beginning to rise over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple and orange. Her arm was encased in a sleek black fiberglass cast. The painkillers had kicked in, making the world feel soft and fuzzy. "I need to go home," Layla slurred slightly as Adrien wheeled her towards the exit. "I have a shift at the diner tonight. Wait, no, I can't work." Panic spiked in her chest. "Rent! I lost the rent money." "You are not going back to that apartment," Adrien said, helping her into the car. "And you are certainly not going back to that diner." "I have to. It's where I live." "Not anymore." Layla was too tired to argue. She fell asleep against the window. When she woke up, the car had stopped. She blinked, expecting to see her run-down brick building on 4th Street. Instead, she saw a wrought-iron gate slowly swinging open, revealing a winding driveway lined with ancient oaks. At the end of the drive stood a mansion that looked more like a fortress. Dark stone, floor-to-ceiling windows, and security cameras blinking from every corner. "Where are we?" she whispered. "My estate." "In Lake Forest," Adrien said, killing the engine. "You will be safe here. No one gets in without my permission." "Adrien, I can't stay here. I'm a waitress. This is too much." He turned to her, his gaze intense. "You called me, Layla. You asked me to come get you. I did. I do not do things halfway. You are under my protection now. That means you stay where I can see you. For how long?" "Until I know you are safe. Until the threat is neutralized." He came around and opened her door. Layla stepped out, clutching her cast. The air here was cleaner, smelling of pine and the lake. "Come," he said, offering his arm. Inside, the house was a masterpiece of modern architecture, cold, minimalist, and expensive. Marble floors, abstract art, and a silence that felt heavy. A woman in a maid's uniform appeared. "Martha, prepare the guest suite in the east wing, the one with the view of the garden," Adrien ordered, "and run a bath. Use the lavender salts. It helps with shock." "Yes, Mr. Volkov." Adrien turned to Layla. "Go with Martha. Wash the diner off you. Sleep. We will talk at dinner." Layla hesitated. "Adrien? Why?" He paused, his hand on the banister of the grand staircase. He looked at her, and for a second the mask slipped. She saw a flicker of loneliness in those steel eyes. "Because," he said quietly, "you were the first person in 10 years to look at me and see a man, not a monster. And I will burn this city to ash before I let anyone hurt you again." He turned and walked toward his study, pulling his phone from his pocket. Layla heard him say one word before the heavy oak doors closed behind him. "Status." She shivered, not from the cold, but from the realization that while she was about to take a warm bath somewhere in Chicago, Derek was about to have a very bad morning. A single light bulb swayed from the ceiling of the abandoned meatpacking warehouse in the industrial district, casting long, dancing shadows against the corrugated metal walls. The air smelled of rust, old blood, and the salty tang of the nearby river. Derek sat tied to a wooden chair in the center of the room. His lip was split, and his expensive leather jacket was ruined, stained with the grime of the trunk he had been thrown into. He blinked, trying to focus as his eyes adjusted to the dim light. "Wake up," a voice echoed from the darkness. Derek jerked his head up. Dmitri stood by the door, arms crossed, looking bored, but it was the man stepping out of the shadows that made Derek's bladder feel weak. Adrien Volkov had changed out of his suit. He wore black tactical pants and a fitted black t-shirt that emphasized the terrifying width of his chest. He held a metal baseball bat loosely in his right hand, the tip resting on the concrete floor. "Who are you?" Derek stammered, his bravado from the diner completely evaporated. "Do you know who my father is? He's a judge. You can't do this." "I know exactly who your father is," Adrien said, his voice calm, conversational. He dragged the bat along the floor as he walked closer. Scrape, scrape, scrape. "Judge Harold Holt, a man with a secret penchant for offshore accounts in the Caymans, accounts that my associates now control." Derek went pale. What do you want? Money?" "I have money." "You have nothing," Adrien corrected. "I looked into your finances, Derek. You are drowning. You owe 50 grand to the Southside Irish, 30 to the local bookies, and you tried to rob a waitress for $200 to pay off interest." Adrien stopped 2 feet in front of him. He leaned down, his face inches from Derek's. "But the money is not why you're here." "Then why?" Derek whimpered. "You touched her." The realization hit Derek like a physical blow. "Layla, this is about that waitress. She's nobody. She's just trash that serves coffee." Adrien moved so fast Derek didn't see it coming. The bat swung upward, connecting with Derek's ribs with a sickening crunch. Derek screamed, the sound tearing through the warehouse. "She is not trash," Adrien whispered, dropping the bat and grabbing Derek by the throat, squeezing until Derek's face turned purple. "She is the only clean thing in this dirty city, and you broke her wing." Adrien released him, and Derek gasped for air, sobbing openly now. I'm sorry. I won't go near her again." "I know you won't," Adrien said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a document. "This is a transfer of debt. I bought all your loans, Derek. Every cent you owe to every criminal in Chicago, you now owe to me." I can pay you back. I'll work. I don't want your money," Adrien interrupted. He walked over to a small metal table and picked up a heavy sledgehammer. He weighed it in his hand. "I believe in the Old Testament, Derek. An eye for an eye. A tooth for a tooth." He turned back to Derek, his eyes devoid of mercy. "You broke her left arm. Radius bone. It's only fair we balance the scales." Derek's eyes widened in horror. No, please. "Dimitri," Adrien said calmly. "Hold his arm out." As the screams began, Adrien didn't blink. He swung. Layla woke with a gasp, sweat clinging to her skin. The room was unfamiliar. Silk sheets, high ceilings, moonlight streaming through sheer curtains. For a second, she thought she was back in the diner, waiting for the blow. Then the pain in her arm registered, a dull throb beneath the cast, grounding her in reality. She was in the Volkov estate. She sat up, clutching the duvet. The silence of the house was unnerving. In her apartment, she could always hear the neighbors arguing or the sirens outside. Here, it was like a tomb. Thirst clawed at her throat. She swung her legs out of bed, finding a pair of plush slippers waiting for her. She wrapped the silk robe that had been left on the chair around her shoulders and crept out into the hallway. The house was dark, shadows stretching across the marble floors. She found the kitchen by following the low hum of a refrigerator. It was a chef's kitchen, gleaming with stainless steel and black granite. She poured a glass of water from the tap, her hand shaking slightly. "You should use the filter tap. The city water tastes like chlorine." Layla spun around, dropping the glass. It shattered on the floor. Adrien sat at the kitchen island, almost invisible in the dark. He was wearing the same black t-shirt he had worn at the warehouse, though he looked freshly showered, his hair damp. A tumbler of amber liquid sat in front of him. "I'm sorry," Layla stammered, immediately crouching down to pick up the glass shards with her good hand. "I'm so sorry. I'll clean it up. I didn't mean to—" "Stop!" Adrien was off the stool instantly. He knelt beside her, his large hand covering hers to stop her from touching the sharp glass. "Leave it," he said gently. "Martha will get it in the morning. You'll cut yourself." "I'm clumsy. I always make a mess," she whispered, looking down. "Derek always said I was useless around the house." Adrien's jaw tightened. He used a finger to lift her chin, forcing her to look at him. His eyes were intense, searching her face. "Derek is a fool who no longer has a voice in your life," Adrien said. "Do not repeat his words in my house." "Where were you?" she asked. She smelled it on him then. Under the soap and the whiskey, there was a faint metallic scent. Copper. "Handling business," he said vaguely. He stood up and pulled her to her feet. "Are you hungry?" "No, just thirsty." He poured her a glass of water from the filtered tap and handed it to her. She drank, watching him. He looked tired. There was a heaviness to his shoulders that hadn't been there at the diner. "Adrien, I can't stay here," she said, lowering the glass. "I appreciate everything. You saved me. But I can't be a charity case. I have to work. I have to pay my rent." "Your rent is paid," he said. "I bought your building this morning." Layla choked on the water. "You what?" "It was a slum. The landlord was negligent. I bought the building. You are now my tenant. And since I am a generous landlord, I have suspended rent indefinitely." "You can't just buy buildings because I live in them." "I can buy the whole block if it keeps you safe," he countered, stepping closer. "Layla, you don't understand. Men like Derek, they are like cockroaches. You step on one, 3 more come out. He has friends. You are vulnerable. So what? I just live here forever? A prisoner in a castle?" "Not a prisoner," he said softly. "A guest. I can't pay you back for this. I didn't ask for payment. Everything has a price, Adrien. I know that much about the world." Adrien looked at her for a long moment. The tension in the kitchen shifted. It wasn't fear anymore. It was something electric. He stepped into her personal space, his body heat radiating toward her. "You're right," he murmured. "There is a price." Layla held her breath. "What is it?" "Be my peace," he said, the words sounding like a confession. "When I come home from the things I have to do, the world is loud. It is bloody and loud. Tonight when I walked in and saw you sleeping, it was quiet. Stay, cook, read, walk in the garden. Just be here. That is the price. Let us Layla looked at the dangerous man offering her sanctuary. She knew she should run. She knew he was a criminal. But looking at the loneliness in his eyes, she realized she didn't want to run. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay. For a while." Adrien let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. He reached out, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. "Good. Now go to sleep, Malishka. Tomorrow, we get you clothes that fit." 3 weeks passed. Life at the Volkov estate developed a strange, comfortable rhythm. Layla's arm was healing. The swelling had gone down, and the bruises had faded to yellow. True to his word, Adrien didn't ask anything of her. He left early in the morning and returned late at night. But the dynamic was shifting. Layla started cooking. At first, Martha, the housekeeper, was horrified. "Mr. Volkov pays me to cook, miss." But Layla insisted. She missed the rhythm of the kitchen. She made lasagna, beef stew, apple pies, hearty, warm food that was a stark contrast to the kale and protein shakes Adrien usually consumed. And Adrien started coming home earlier. He would sit at the kitchen island, loosening his tie, watching her move around the kitchen with a strange fascination. They talked, at first about small things, the weather, the garden, but slowly about real things, her childhood in Ohio, his upbringing in St. Petersburg, before his father moved the family empire to America. He never spoke about his business, but Layla saw the bruises on his knuckles. She saw the way his phone never stopped buzzing. She saw the armed guards patrolling the perimeter. She wasn't naive. She knew she was living in the eye of a hurricane. One Tuesday evening, Adrien came home with a different energy. He was tense, his movements sharp. He carried a large black garment bag. "We have to go out," he said, placing the bag on the sofa where Layla was reading. "Out? Where?" Layla marked her page. "The mayor's charity gala, at the Art Institute." "Adrien, I can't go to a gala. I have a cast on my arm. And I'm a waitress." "You are my partner for the evening," he said firmly. "Rumors are circulating. My enemies think I have gone soft because I haven't been seen in the clubs for a month. They think I am distracted. I need to show them I am very much in control. And bringing a crippled woman with you proves that." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Bringing the most beautiful woman in the city proves I have everything I want." Layla blushed. "I don't have anything to wear." He pointed to the bag. "Now you do." An hour later, Layla stood in front of the full-length mirror, stunned. The dress was emerald green silk, sleeveless on the right, with a long, flowing sleeve on the left that cleverly concealed most of her black cast. It was backless, draping over her curves like liquid water. It was modest, yet incredibly sensual. She had done her makeup simply, leaving her dark hair in loose waves. She looked expensive. She looked like she belonged in this house. There was a knock on the door. "Layla? Come in." Adrien entered. He froze. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him so perfectly it was almost criminal. He adjusted his cufflinks, his eyes dragging over her form from her heels to her eyes. The hunger in his gaze made her knees weak. "You look—" He cleared his throat, searching for the word. "Dangerous." "Dangerous?" She laughed nervously. "You will stop hearts tonight, Layla. Hopefully not mine." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" The drive to the Art Institute was silent, but it was a charged silence. Adrien's hand rested on the center console, inches from hers. When they arrived, the paparazzi were a wall of flashing lights. Adrien didn't flinch. He put his hand on the small of her back, guiding her through the chaos with a protective possessiveness that told every photographer, "She is mine." Inside, the gala was a sea of diamonds, champagne, and fake smiles. Layla felt out of place, but Adrien's grip on her waist never wavered. He introduced her simply as Layla, offering no last name, which only fueled the whispers. "Volkov!" a voice boomed from behind them. Adrien stiffened. His hand on her waist tightened slightly. A warning. They turned. A man stood there, older, with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his cold grey eyes. He was surrounded by 3 younger men who looked like bodyguards, dressed in ill-fitting suits. "Thomas Blackwood," Adrien said, his voice dropping to that icy tone Layla remembered from the phone call. "I didn't think they allowed snakes in the Art Institute." Blackwood laughed, a dry, rasping sound. "Always a charmer, Adrien. I see you've brought a pet." Blackwood's eyes raked over Layla with disgusting familiarity. "Pretty. A bit broken, though." He gestured to her cast. "Did she try to fly away?" "She is not a pet, Thomas. Watch your tongue, or I will cut it out right here in front of the mayor," Adrien said. He wasn't shouting, but the people nearby stopped talking and moved away. The air crackled with violence. Blackwood stepped closer, ignoring the threat. "You've been quiet, Volkov. Some of us thought you retired. Or died. My nephew Silas was very disappointed to hear you were still breathing. Tell Silas if he wants to see me, he knows where I live. But tell him to bring a body bag. For himself." Blackwood's smile vanished. He leaned in, lowering his voice so only Adrien and Layla could hear. "You think you're untouchable, Adrien. But everyone has a weakness." His eyes flicked to Layla. "Does she know about the fire on 5th Street? Adrien went rigid. For the first time, Layla saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not for himself, but of something being revealed. "Walk away, Thomas," Adrien growled. 5 years ago, Blackwood said to Layla, ignoring Adrien. "A bakery burned down, a tragic accident, an insurance scam gone wrong. 2 people died. A nice couple, the Millers." Layla felt the blood drain from her face. The room started to spin. My parents were the Millers. They died in a gas leak." "Gas leak," Blackwood chuckled darkly. "Is that what the police report said? Convenient, considering the man standing next to you was the one collecting protection money from that block back then. And the Millers, they were late on payment." Layla pulled away from Adrien as if burned. She looked up at him, searching his face for a denial. "Adrien," she whispered, "tell me he's lying." Adrien didn't speak. His face was a mask of stone, but his eyes were full of a devastating guilt. "Layla, we need to leave," Adrien said, reaching for her. "No!" She stepped back, bumping into a waiter. Champagne glasses crashed to the floor. The sound silenced the room. "Did you?" Layla asked, her voice trembling. Did you kill my parents?" "It is not that simple," Adrien said, his voice pleading. "Layla, please, not here." "It's a yes or no question," she screamed, tears springing to her eyes. "I didn't light the match," Adrien said hoarsely, "but I gave the order to scare them. It went wrong. It wasn't supposed to happen." The world shattered. The man who had saved her from a monster was the monster who had created her nightmare. Layla looked at him with horror. "Don't come near me." She turned and ran. She ran through the crowd, past the stunned socialites, out the double doors and into the rainy Chicago night. "Layla!" Adrien roared, shoving Blackwood aside so hard the older man fell to the floor. But by the time Adrien reached the street, she was gone. A yellow taxi was speeding away into the traffic. And across the street, sitting in a dark sedan, Thomas Blackwood's nephew, Silas, watched through binoculars. He picked up his phone. "She's alone," Silas said, smiling. "Grab her." The rain in Chicago didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Layla watched the city blur past the taxi window, her reflection ghosting against the glass. The emerald dress, once a symbol of a fairy tale, now felt like a costume in a horror movie. "Where to, lady?" the driver asked, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror. He saw a woman in a gown worth more than his car, sobbing silently. He probably assumed it was a lover's quarrel. "Just drive," Layla whispered, clutching her cast. "Anywhere but downtown. Just keep driving." Her mind was a fractured mirror. Every shard reflected a different lie. Adrien saving her in the diner, Adrien holding her hand in the hospital, Adrien admitting he gave the order. The man she had started to love was the architect of her life's greatest tragedy. The realization was a physical weight in her chest, heavier than the plaster on her arm. She had sought shelter from a storm, only to realize she had run into the eye of a hurricane. The taxi slowed as it turned onto a desolate stretch of road near the shipping yards. The street lights here were broken, leaving the road swallowed by shadows. "Why are we stopping?" Layla wiped her face, sitting up straighter. "This isn't a highway." "Roadblock," the driver grunted, tapping the steering wheel nervously. "Construction." Layla looked out. There were no orange cones, no flashing lights, just a black van parked horizontally across the narrow two-lane road, blocking their path completely. A cold shiver raced down her spine. "Back up," she ordered, her voice trembling. "Turn around." I can't." "What do you mean you can't?" "Put it in reverse." "I'm sorry, miss," the driver said, his voice cracking. He unlocked the doors. "They said they knew where my kids go to school." Before Layla could process the betrayal, the back door was ripped open. Cold, wet air rushed in, smelling of the river and exhaust. Hands, rough, gloved hands, grabbed at her ankles. "No, get off me!" Layla screamed, kicking out with her legs. She scrambled to the other side of the cab, but the other door flew open, revealing two more men in ski masks. She swung her cast like a club, connecting with a man's jaw with a solid thud. He groaned but didn't let go. He grabbed her hair, yanking her out of the taxi and onto the wet pavement. The puddles soaked instantly through the silk of her dress. She gasped, trying to crawl away, but a boot pressed down on her back, pinning her to the ground. "Feisty," a familiar voice drawled from above. Layla froze. She looked up, rain plastering her hair to her face. Silas Blackwood stood over her, holding a large umbrella over himself, keeping perfectly dry while she lay in the mud. He was smiling, a cruel, thin-lipped smile that didn't reach his dead eyes. "Adrien really does have a type," Silas chuckled, crouching down so his face was inches from hers. "Broken things." "Let me go," Layla spat, mud on her cheek. "I'm not with him anymore. I left him." "Oh, sweetheart," Silas tisked, reaching out to stroke her cheek with a gloved finger. She flinched away. "You don't get to leave Adrien Volkov, and neither do I. He humiliated me. He took my money. He took my reputation. So I'm going to take the only thing he seems to care about." He nodded to his men. "Bag her." A thick black hood was shoved over her head. The world went dark. Layla screamed Adrien's name, a traitorous instinct, before a needle pricked her neck and the darkness turned into silence. 30 minutes later, the lobby of the Art Institute was a chaotic scene of shattered glass and confused socialites. But in the center of the storm, there was a void of terrifying silence. Adrien Volkov stood still. He had ripped off his bow tie. His tuxedo jacket was unbuttoned. He was staring at his phone, waiting for a signal that wasn't coming. Dmitri sprinted into the room, his face pale. "Boss, we found the taxi." "And?" Adrian's voice was a low growl, barely human, abandoned near the Navy pier yards. The driver was gone, but we found this. Dmitri held up a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a single muddy emerald shoe. Adrien stared at the shoe. He felt a pain in his chest that no bullet had ever caused. He had tried to be honest. He had tried to change. And because of that, because he had hesitated, she was gone. "Blackwood?" Adrien asked, looking up. His eyes were no longer grey. They were black voids. "Thomas Blackwood is claiming ignorance," Dmitri said, "but his nephew, Silas, has gone off the grid. His accounts were emptied an hour ago." Adrien took the bag with the shoe, gripping it tightly. "Get the car." "Where are we going, boss?" "To the armory," Adrien said, turning toward the exit. The terrified guests parted like water before him. "I am done playing by the rules. Tonight, we are not businessmen. Tonight, we are butchers. And if the police intervene, then we kill them too," Adrien said, walking out into the rain. "Burn the whole city if you have to. No one sleeps until she is found." Layla woke to the smell of rust and old chemicals. Her head pounded in rhythm with her heartbeat. She was seated in a metal chair, her wrists zip-tied behind her back. Her broken arm throbbed violently inside the cast. She blinked, her eyes adjusting to the dim yellow light of a single halogen bulb hanging from a high ceiling. She was in a factory, an old one. Dust motes danced in the light. "You're awake," Silas's voice echoed. He was sitting on a crate 10 feet away, cleaning a fingernail with a hunting knife. "Where am I?" Layla rasped. Her throat felt like sandpaper. "Somewhere historic." Silas stood up, spreading his arms. "Do you recognize the brickwork? The smell?" Layla looked around. The high arched windows, the faded logo on the far wall. "Miller." Her breath hitched. "No." "Yes," Silas grinned. "The old textile plant. It shares a back alley with what used to be the Miller Bakery. This is where Adrien's men stood when they threw the Molotov cocktail that missed its target 5 years ago." Tears welled in Layla's eyes. To be brought here, to the graveyard of her childhood, was a cruelty she couldn't comprehend. "Why?" she whispered. "Because I want poetic justice," Silas said, walking toward a stack of red jerry cans near the wall. "Adrien likes fire. He built his empire on ashes. I thought it only fitting that his empire ends in them." He began to unscrew the caps of the gas cans. The fumes hit Layla instantly, sharp and dizzying. "He's coming for you, you know," Silas said, pouring the gasoline in a wide circle around her chair. Splash. Splash. "He's tearing the city apart. Police scanners are going crazy. He just blew up one of my uncle's warehouses just to get a name." Silas stopped in front of her, the can dangling from his hand. "He loves you," Silas observed, tilting his head, "which makes this so much more fun. I want to see if the wolf is afraid to get burned." He pulled out a heavy revolver and checked the cylinder. Then he checked his watch. Showtime. The heavy metal doors at the far end of the factory groaned. The assault didn't begin with a knock. The skylights, 3 stories above, shattered inward. Ropes uncoiled from the darkness of the stormy night, and 4 figures in black tactical gear dropped into the factory floor like spiders. They opened fire before their boots even touched the ground. Thwip, thwip, thwip. Silas's 3 guards, who had been standing by the entrance, dropped instantly, silenced bullets finding their marks with surgical precision. Silas screamed, ducking behind a heavy industrial loom. "Kill her! If anyone comes closer, I light the match." The shooting stopped instantly. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of rain hammering on the metal roof. From the shadows near the entrance, a figure emerged. Adrien Volkov. He wasn't wearing his tuxedo anymore. He was dressed in a Kevlar vest over a blood-stained white shirt, holding an assault rifle loosely in one hand. His face was streaked with soot and rain, his hair wild. He looked like a fallen angel who had crawled his way back out of hell. He walked into the circle of light, ignoring the gun Silas was pointing at Layla's head from behind the machinery. "Silas," Adrien's voice was calm. Terrifyingly calm. "It's over." Silas popped up, grabbing Layla by the hair and dragging her chair back, pressing the barrel of his gun into her temple. In his other hand, he held a silver Zippo lighter, the flame already lit. "It's over when I say it's over," Silas shrieked, his eyes manic. "Drop the gun, Volkov, or she becomes a torch." Adrien froze. He looked at Layla. Her face was pale, streaked with tears and mud, but her eyes were locked on his. There was fear there, yes, but also trust. Even after everything, she looked at him like he was her savior. The guilt hit Adrien like a physical blow. He slowly lowered the rifle, placing it on the concrete floor. He kicked it away. "Let her go," Adrien said, raising his hands. "You want me? I am here, unarmed. I don't just want you dead," Silas sneered. "I want you to suffer. I want you to watch." He looked down at the gasoline-soaked circle around Layla. "No!" Adrien shouted, taking a step forward. Silas dropped the lighter. Whoosh! The air was sucked out of the room as the gasoline ignited. A wall of orange flame, 6 feet high, erupted around Layla. Layla screamed, shrinking back into the chair as the heat blasted her. The fire was roaring, hungry and close. The smoke began to choke her instantly. "Goodbye, Layla," Silas laughed, turning to run towards the back exit while Adrien was distracted. Adrien didn't chase him. He didn't hesitate. He didn't think. Adrien ran into the fire. He charged straight through the wall of flames. He felt the fire singe his eyebrows, felt the heat blister the skin on his arms. But he pushed through the inferno to get to the center of the circle. "Adrien!" Layla coughed, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You're burning!" "I don't care!" Adrien roared over the sound of the fire. He pulled a combat knife from his belt and slashed the zip ties binding her wrists. He grabbed her, pulling her against his chest, shielding her face with his jacket. "Hold your breath," he commanded, "or we are going out the way I came in." "Adrien, your arm," Layla cried, seeing the fabric of his shirt smoking. "Trust me." He scooped her up, curling his body around hers to protect her from the flames. With a guttural roar of effort, he charged back through the firewall. For a second, there was only orange heat and pain. Then they tumbled out onto the cool concrete floor, rolling away from the blaze. Adrien collapsed on his back, gasping for air, clutching Layla to him. "Are you hurt? Did it touch you?" Layla pushed herself up, her hands trembling as she touched his face. His skin was red and angry, his hair singed. "I'm okay. You walked through fire for me. I would walk through hell for you," he rasped, coughing. Bang! A gunshot echoed through the factory. Adrien jerked violently, a spray of red mist erupting from his shoulder. Layla screamed. Silas hadn't left. He was standing by the door, gun raised, his face twisted in hate. "Why won't you just die?" Adrien growled, the sound animalistic. He pushed Layla behind a concrete pillar. The pain in his shoulder was blinding, but the rage was stronger. He didn't look for his gun. He looked at Silas. Silas fired again. Click! The gun was empty. Silas's face fell. He turned to run, but he was too late. Adrien moved with the last of his strength. He tackled Silas into a pile of metal piping. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution. Adrien's fists rained down, unleashing 5 years of guilt, anger, and fear. He beat him until Silas stopped moving, until the threat was gone forever. Adrien stood up, swaying. He looked at his bloody knuckles. Then he looked at Layla, who was watching him with wide, tear-filled eyes. He stumbled back to her, dropping to his knees. The adrenaline was fading, and the shock of the burn and the bullet wound was setting in. "We have to go," he whispered, leaning his forehead against hers. "It's done. The debt is paid. Layla wrapped her arms around his neck, holding him up. "Yes, let's go home." 2 months later. The autumn leaves were turning gold in the gardens of the Folkoff estate. The air was crisp, smelling of impending winter. Layla stood on the balcony, holding a warm cup of tea. Her cast wand was gone. Though her arm still stiffened when it rained, she heard the heavy oak door open behind her. Adrien stepped out. He had healed, but he was changed. There was a new scar on his jaw from the fight, and he moved with a slight stiffness in his shoulder. He wasn't the invincible Mafia prince anymore. He was a man who had bled. He stood beside her, looking out at the grounds. He didn't touch her. He had been giving her space, waiting for her to decide. "The lawyers finished the paperwork," Adrien said softly. "The trust fund is set up. Enough for you to go anywhere. Paris, Rome. You could open that bakery you talked about." Layla placed her cup on the railing. She turned to face him. "Is that what you want? For me to leave?" Adrien gripped the railing, his knuckles turning white. "I want you to be safe." "I am a dangerous man, Layla. My past is written in blood. I caused you the greatest pain of your life. I don't deserve to keep you." "You're right," Layla said. "You are dangerous. And you did hurt me." Adrien looked down, accepting his sentence. "But," Layla continued, stepping closer. She reached out and took his scarred hand in hers. "You also saved me. You listened when I called. You bled for me. You burned for me." She lifted his hand and pressed a kiss to his palm. "I don't want a safe life, Adrien. I don't want a man who runs when things get hard. I want the man who walks through fire." Adrien looked at her, his steel eyes softening, filled with a raw, desperate hope. "Are you sure? Once you stay, I will never let you go again." "I'm sure," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm home." Adrien let out a shuddering breath and pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. He held her tight, as if she were the only thing anchoring him to the earth. And as the sun set over the estate, casting long shadows across the grass, the wolf finally rested, knowing he didn't have to be alone in the dark anymore. Wow, I literally have chills. What an intense ending for Adrien and Layla. From a desperate phone call in a diner to walking through fire, that is what I call true devotion. If this story had your heart racing, please do me a huge favor and smash that like button. It helps the channel so much. And I have to ask, do you think Layla made the right choice staying with Adrien after everything that happened? Or should she have taken the money and run? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I love reading your theories. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next story. I have a really special one coming up next week that you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.